I realized very quickly that there were some expectations to how I should fill my role as a youth minister. And I wasn't aware of some of them before I was breaking someone's expectations to how I would fill my role. And some of these expectations felt like I was standing in front of Mount Everest. And 20 years of youth ministry later, I have found that I'm not the only one who feels this way. Quite a few youth workers share the same experience, that they have felt the weight of a lot of expectations. In a survey using burnout indicators in Norway, they had done this research in a lot of different professions, and a few years ago they took the burnout indicator to some youth leaders. And what happened was that the numbers of youth leaders that were at some or a great degree at risk of burnout was 65%. That's the highest number in any professions. During all these years in youth ministry, I've met a lot of expectations. Not only from the participants, but from a lot of other people, from old church members, from difficult parents, from kids who start an orange fight at 2 a.m. and then run away, from washing the church for 2 hours after the orange war, from members of the church who, despite my effort, found pieces of orange at the door next day and are asking me why I'm not cleaning up properly after the youth meetings. And there has been a lot of disappointments and a lot of expectations that I have not been able to fulfill. But as Mark Yaconellis says, if you have a youth group of 12 where nobody understands your illustrations and one would like to kill you, you have a youth group just like Jesus. So somehow youth ministry is a hard thing to do. It's not easy. And when I was going to write a master's thesis in leadership, I wanted to figure out, what does this mountain of expectations really look like? So I tried to figure out, and first of all, why I did this was because I just love youth ministry. And there are probably some reasons for it. The first time I was a youth pastor for my friends. And something are happening to you when you see one of your friends receive Christ as their Savior. It did something to me that I'll never forget. And when I see all these young people today, I still see my old friends sitting there. And I also have a lot of other selfish reasons why I love youth ministry. First of all, when teenagers read the Bible for the first time, when they pray for the first time, you are there. You can see it with your own eyes. You can see the change in their lives. But also because youth ministry is, in my opinion, not just important, but probably the most important thing we do as a church. Youth ministry has never been the place to get glory, fame, money, or status, even though I think youth ministry is the place where the church gets closest to its mission and closest to the people's lives. Uncountable numbers of youth have received help to navigate through the most challenging seasons of their lives through youth ministry. And youth leaders play a special role. They are usually a little older, but they are not their parents, they are not their sports coach, and they are not the teacher that are putting grades on them. Youth leader, they have it's possible for them to play another role in their lives. So youth leaders are usually, in many ways, people youth confide in first, about pregnancy, about broken hearts, about suicidal thoughts, about eating disorders, and about parents' divorce. And I've seen youth ministers being advisors in decisions about education, romantic relationships, and in questions about faith and religion. And this is where many take their first steps as leaders. Most of them do so without any training, without any instruction, without work description. But in my opinion, this is a role that deserves more recognition more recognition and attention, that demands more leadership skills than the level of training implies. So what I tried to find out was, what are people really expecting from a youth leader? What I did, I visited 6 different youth groups. I talked to more than 100 people. I talked to participants, I talked to youth leaders, I talked to church leaders, I talked to parents, and I talked to some other church members about what they did expect. And what I ended up with was, I found a total of 465 different tasks that I tried to organize into 30 different roles. And I also tried to organize these 30 roles into 4 different groups. And I tried to differentiate between roles that are relational focused and roles that are activity focused, and at the same time roles that are want to change more. So they are developing something, and other roles that are more stabilizing. And then I ended up with 4 windows, and I think we should have maybe 3 or 4 minutes to just talk through all these 30 roles briefly. We can start down in the lower right corner with the administration tasks. A youth leader is expected to be an administrator, to oversee the economy, to have annual reports and answer their emails. 21 of my respondents also thought that youth leader should be an entertainer. He should keep the participants active. He should also take responsible when others back out, so he is the person in charge. And he is like a butler that should see all things and see what has to be taken care of. He definitely have to communicate with the participants, with the leaders, and let the parents know when there will be a camp. He should be planning, coordinating, and delegating tasks. And some, especially church members, expected the youth leader to take care of their legacy, pass on psalms and traditions, and make sure that the teenagers grew fond of them. Okay, let's move to the relationship building roles. The youth leader, 17 people are mentioning that the youth leader are a represent for their domination, for their organization, for their church. So they have to meet other church members. They are bridge builders and have to meet other churches and other youth groups. And the following tasks are move to a closer, step by step, to closer relationship. So we start with a mingler. That's about get in touch with others, make sure that everybody gets seen and do outreach things. The cuddler role is to build an environment where everybody is happy. 24 people also are mentioning that they should be a good Samaritan, that care about and care for the teenagers. And then they also should build relationships to the teenagers, taking care of each individual, maybe invite them home. It's also expected that they should be good counselors or therapists. And at the end, it's also expected that the leaders are the participants' buddies, actually friends. And that's what I, at least in my country, see this difference between the teacher role and the youth minister role. But a teacher, in Norway, you should not be a friend with your students in social media, but a youth minister is expected to be that. Okay, let's move up to the personal development roles. 33 of my respondents think the youth leader needs integrity. He needs to be authentic. He should also be inspire people, encourage people. Some people think he should be a missionary who feel deeply about the youth who are not Christian and wishing that they will be saved. He should also recruit participants and leaders. He should not only develop the church, but also some people telling that he should also develop the community. He should live a missional life and care about the city. And he should be a skilled preacher and teacher. And finally, he should also develop participants and leaders in making rough diamonds shine. Challenging, equipping, and supervising the young people, the students. Okay, the last group of roles is the ministry development roles. Innovator, there should be creative innovators. Youth leaders are also expected to not be stuck in the same spot, but to grow both professionally and in faith. 7 people are mentioned that they should also design the program and the ideologies and the action plans. And he should be a theologian. He should know theology and Christian teaching well. And some of the students are saying that they expect the youth leader to know if this song is Catholic or Baptist song or a Lutheran song. Some think he should be a youth expert and understanding youth. Some think he will be a visionary thinker who makes plans and visions for the youth group. But he is also expected to carry the visions himself, leading the ministry in the right direction. And finally, he is also going to be a spiritual leader, be responsible for the teaching, for the profile, for the core creeds, for the ideology, and for the values the ministry is led by. Okay, I don't know if you're probably already tired, but this is more or less how Mount Everest looks like. These are all the expectations I found. And what we're doing now, the next session I will talk a little more about what the other literature about youth ministry and leadership are telling us about the leadership role. And then we'll go back and look more and analyze more of these, what I found. And finally, we'll try to conclude and find, is there possible to make some kind of job description for youth minister? And that's pretty hard, so I don't know if I will be able to answer all your dreams. But let's move on to what the study of youth ministry is telling us about the leadership role. And I will point out 5 different things. First of all, I studied more than 100 books from the study of youth ministry and tried to find out which roles do they focus on. And what I found was pretty much the same as I did in my own research. There were 4 roles that I didn't find in the literature. There were a few more roles that I didn't find in when I interviewed people that you could see in the literature, but more or less they were pretty much the same. The second thing I will mention is that there are very few books about the leadership role as a youth pastor or youth minister or youth leader. I will mention 2 of these. This book by Houston Heflin, which I really recommend. It's a biblical-based study on the role of youth ministry or youth minister. And together with Doug Fields is probably the most well-known youth minister in the world. And this is one of the most best-selling books in the study of youth ministry. Both these are show us how suspense-filled the task of the youth pastor is. Like we are at the same time expected to both be a leader and a servant. We are expected to be a pastoral shepherd, and at the same time an he also pointed out that there are some differences between the youth pastor and the main pastor of the church. That youth pastor is not only expected to be able to teach the children of the church, but is also expected to have a missionary view on those outside the church. So these are some of the tension in the role as a youth minister that these books are focusing on. In the 1990s, we had done youth ministry, a modern type of youth ministry, for more than 60 years. And what we discovered in the 1990s was a lot of bad statistics. We heard that, one of the statistics was that 70% of the kids growing up in church would leave the church before they became adults. The chance of survive as a child at Titanic was bigger chance to survive at Titanic than it was as a child in a church. So in the late 1990s, a lot of youth ministers see that what we are doing is actually not working, and started to become a feeling there is a crisis in youth ministry. And I think what happened is in 1999, 2 books were published, one in the US by Hans Kristian Skaar and one in Britain, that are pointing out very clear about this crisis. And what's happening the next years, in the beginning of the 2000s, is that probably all youth ministers with academic ambitions try to write his own book about what's wrong with youth ministry and how should we do youth ministry instead of what we have done. But there have been a paradigm shift in the academic world of youth ministry, from moving away from youth work focused on activities and entertainment, but not only to one new paradigm, but to a whole bunch of new paradigms. These are some examples. And I try to put these paradigms into these 4 windows, and what I discovered was that most of these new things in youth ministry are basically relational focused roles. So that's, in the 1990s we saw a lot of books like 999 jokes or 999 games you could use in youth ministry. We don't see much of those books anymore. They're focusing on other things, and very few books are concerned with administration roles. Okay, so this was the 3rd thing I tried to point out. I will also mention 2 things from the study of leadership, and I'll just mention short. We don't have time to go deeply into this, but Henry Mintzberg is the great man about writing a lot of books about leadership roles, and what he stresses a lot is that all the roles are connected to each other. So you can't just say that I'm just focusing on being the decisional roles, because all the roles are connected. You can't just skip all the lunches and relationship buildings, because if you do that, you will not get enough information to do the right decisions. Another man we could also mention is Isaac Editzes. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's talking about, there has been in the study of leadership, some have thought that if you are a good leader, you could lead anything. Isaac Editzes disagree. He thinks that there are different organizations that need different leaders. Like a hospital, doctors would never accept to be led by any other than one of the best professional doctors. If you're starting a new organization, you need a creative, innovative, visionary, crazy, cool leader that has a lot of passion and that will make people passionate about the new organization. But if you are leading an accounting agency, for example, you need anything but a crazy, visionary leader. But what we saw was that the expectations was quite different between different youth ministries. And I also saw it with my own eyes. When I came to a big congregation, a youth church with 250 participants, when the church service started, the youth leader was sitting in the back row in church because he had done his job. He had a lot of groups of preachers and worship leaders, and so his job was to prepare them for the service, and when the service started, he was done. While I came to an independent youth group in the countryside, where there were one leader and she was doing everything. So when I arrived, she was putting the pizza in the oven while she was also at the same time trying to prepare for the sermon. So of course, there are a lot of different expectations in these different groups. But when we talk to the leaders, they say that what we are doing the most is actually to do administration. That's the tasks they are mentioned most often. And we can see what one youth leader said about the job as a youth leader. The other leaders expect you to excel in relationships, preaching, and implementation. The board is focusing on administration, annual reports, and financial statements. The adults in the church wants you to show up at their services and preach there sometimes, in addition to showing up at their fundraisers and helping them out with practical stuffs like moving freezers or painting bathroom ceilings. The participants expect us to care about them, build relationships, and give amazing sermons. And the church leaders I work for expect me to show up at a large number of events, employee gatherings, and regional meetings. So he was feeling a lot of this pressure between a lot of different expectations. And we have also already seen a few of those, that this is it's a role with a lot of tension. At the same time, we should have focus on relations and activity. At the same time, we are developing something and we try to stabilizing. We should be spiritual, but also interpersonal. We should be professional, but at the same time, as a friend, we can just look at what some of the participants are telling us. Look into spiritual versus interpersonal. This is one of the participants, and she said, it is important that they are Christians, but not judging or too Christians, or that everybody can talk to them. They can't be crusaders for Jesus, if you know what I mean. Some other try to explain the difference between professional and friend, and they think that the youth leader should be a buddy, but still an adult. And another girl puts it this way: they can give some advice, say what they think. It's kind of like talking with a therapist or a professional, but in more friend-like ways. So we need to be able to talk with them about anything. And they have to be available and trustworthy. We need to feel safe with them, that we can tell them things in confidence, that they don't pass on. So they more like buddies on the same level, not too grown up. They have to be like one of us, a good role model, but still tell jokes, to be a leader, but at the same time being someone we can be friends with. Yeah. And now I really think you really get, you really understand your role as a youth minister. That's pretty clear. Some also try to talk about the difference between influencer and not being too intrusive. This is a mother. She's telling, it's important to me that they show respect for the youth. They should not be intrusive, but helpful. And it is significant that they respect physical and mental boundaries. That is extremely important. So we have seen a lot of these expectations, and sometimes I just wondered, are there any limits for all these expectations? And a few, a few of these things really scared me. Like this, they have to be available 24/7. Well, they should come wake us up if we don't show up at school. They have to make sure that we don't get bored, that we are happy and smiling all the time. Ideally, they should have common interests with everybody so that they can talk with everybody. They should make everyone feel good, and they have to be outgoing. Yes, cool. They have to be cool, very cool, but not too cool. Something between cool and too cool. And it's expected that we should be available at all times. A constantly smiling machine of happiness who makes everybody feel well, is responsible for wake-up calls, has common interests with everybody, finds the perfect balance in enthusiasm, and at the same time is the key to avoid boredom and create comfort. I think no one but Jesus is able to meet these expectations. And some of the leaders are talking about her youth leader, and she said if one of the teenagers was drunk, she would probably be willing to pick them up there and take them home as well. Their passion for the kids have no limits. One of the youth leaders puts it this way: we are becoming multi-artists, but it is not clear how far our responsibility goes. Some expect us to be working for the Child Protective Service as well. It builds up quickly. You are expected to do what your predecessor was good at, in addition to your own strengths. I missed a guide that says exactly what we are supposed to do. Okay, so now we finally reached the final session here. Is it possible to establish some boundaries? Is it possible to make some kind of job description here? At the first glance, it's probably not. Some of the youth leaders said this: it's important to have a bit of everything. Everything is necessary. I cannot point out something as most important. That would be like impossible. One day, you talk to somebody who is considering suicide. The next day, somebody wants to be saved. And without focusing on relationships and organizing services, those conversations might not have taken place at all. You do everything. You're a potato. It's all kinds of things. It's like everything. But I wonder if this teenager maybe could help us. They have to be outgoing. Yes, cool. They have to be cool, very cool, but not too cool. Something between cool and too cool. Because I think this quote could teach us a few things. First of all, it's totally impossible to meet all these expectations. No one are able to do that. Secondly, we cannot do this alone. Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And also, the Ephesians 4, the Paul's letter to Ephesians, says it this way: so Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip these people for works of service. To each one of us, grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. So none of us have got everything that's needed. Jesus gave different gifts to different people. The third thing I think we could learn is that the teenager here expects us to take control over the role. That we have to, it's our responsibility. And one of our mistakes as youth leader has that, I've been led by a lot of other meanings and expectations. The first years I was a youth leader, there were especially one guy, an old man. He had a lot of strong meanings, and he had also always caps lock on when he was talking. And I tried to please him instead of taking control of the role and to define what's the most important things here. Because we have seen these, right now I'm leading a youth organization with 12,000 members. And to be honest, I guess it's 12,000 different meanings about what we should focus on. what we should use money on. And my job, the most important job as a leader, what I've learned is that my job is to disappoint people. Because it's impossible to please all these 12,000 members. Maybe we could do 20 IDs in the next years, realize 20 IDs, and then 11,980 have to be disappointed. And that's my job. It's not a funny job, but I think it's a very important job, that if you don't disappoint anyone, your ministry will have no direction. The fourth thing I will mention is that she was talking about a center in the role. There is a place between cool and too cool. Probably hard to find. But even though she is talking about that there is a center in what we are expected to, how we should do our work as youth minister. And we have seen that we cannot just focus on one role. We have to have focus on more roles. So we can't just pick one role, but maybe at the same time we could point out what is the most important things in our ministry. And what we have seen is that there will be different things in different youth groups. I asked also my respondents, what do you see as the most important roles? And I don't know if you can see anything here that surprised you. Something is changed from all the other circles. It's in a youth leader circle. And the L has suddenly appeared. And that's interesting because when we ask the youth leaders about which roles do you expect the youth leader to do, most of them answered administrative roles, and in the second place, relationship building roles. But when they are telling us what they think is the most important roles, they are suddenly talking about ministry developing roles. You can have very many amazing dreams and visions that you look forward to pursuing and putting into action when you start out as a youth leader. But ultimately, you end up finding people who can bring cakes, one of the youth leaders said. Because all this administration thing takes so much time. And she continues, and then there is this. I would have loved to have more time to read books and stuff. I am allowed to do this in my working hours, but there is never any time left to study, to develop, to think ahead, to work on vision, and to meet other youth leaders. So this is what they highlight as the two most important roles that I did find in my research was, in the first place, actually vision designer. And all the youth leaders that I interviewed said, put this on the first place. The most important task for a youth minister is pointing out a direction, creating a vision and goals, and develop the ministry. And no one else than the youth leaders themselves are thinking about this. So, what they think is the most important thing is actually what we have done right now. Is to find out, of all these expectations, what should I do? Some tasks are more central, others are more peripheral. As we have seen, it depends on the context which roles are most important, and it is crucial that the youth leaders themselves have a say in this, what they should prioritize and who they will disappoint. The vision designer, this is about what's the center of the youth group. What's actually our goal? and how on earth do we get there? And I've seen a lot of, most youth ministries I visited really don't have a goal. But I also visited a lot of youth ministries that have a goal, like we want young people to meet Jesus. But then what they actually are doing is more or less eating pizza and playing table tennis. So it doesn't look like they have a plan for how the young people will meet Jesus. So, two important questions is, what's the center of youth ministry? And if we should try to find out which roles are the most important, we have to answer this question first. And I think the answer on this question will be different from different youth ministries. So we can't just give a one-size-fits-all answer. Because without goals and priorities, the road usually don't lead where we want to go. And when we know what's the center of our ministry and how to get there, we can start asking the important questions of what the center of our job as a minister are. And these are just 6 examples of questions you could ask yourself to find out what is actually the center of my job. And I think this is our job as youth workers to find out what is our job. But of course, we should not do this all alone. I started this session with also talking about the burnout and discouragement problem in youth ministry. And one of the research on burnout in youth ministry concluded with these 3 points. The reason for the burnout among youth leaders were unclear goals, unclear expectations, and unclear priorities. And the solution is, of course, clear goals, clear expectations, and clear priorities, or good leadership. Clear expectations, making sure we have what we need to complete the task, guidance along the way, help when we need it, and good evaluation of our contribution. But I also think there are at least one more leaders that you are responsible for the local youth leaders in different groups. And I think also we who are responsible for these youth leaders have a responsibility to give them what they need to be able to answer these questions about what is their task. And I think most youth leaders don't know what to do. And to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of good examples of how to make a good job description. This is one example from the organization Young Life. And they actually print this short card out and put it in the pocket so the youth leaders could have it with them everywhere they go. And this is telling us that when they are going to start a new youth group with a missional focus, first of all, their first task is to build a fellowship of leaders that pray together, that read the Bible together, that commit to each other. And then the second thing they should do is to build a committee of adults that will pray for them, that would care for them, they are responsible for. And then the third thing is, before they're starting any youth group or youth church, is to start building contacts with youth. Create memories together with youth. They have a principle that you should be where the kids feel at home, and you should deserve that if they're going to listen to you. And finally, the fourth thing they should do is try to build a kind of more youth group thing when they preach the gospel and leading them into discipleship. And they could also do that one-to-one. But this is just an example of some kind of job description. We can also look at, you could look in this book. This is the only book I ever read that have tried to make a job description. I don't think it's very good, so, yeah, these are some highlights from the book. Okay. So we saw that vision designer was one of the roles that especially the youth leaders thought was the most important role. The other role I will mention, well, before I do that, I will just have a look into, a few months ago, I just discovered a research done by Burnout Institute, done by David Kinnaman. It's possible to download from the Burnout Institute website, which I found really interesting. And I think it's interesting for us if we try to find out what is the center of youth ministry. He tried to find out the difference between youth ministry that lasts and youth ministry that don't last. So he is asking people who used to be a part of youth ministry and a few years, and ask them about how did your youth ministry look like. And what if, he found out 5 different principles that had, was important. So what he discovered was that teenagers that stayed in church, the first thing was that they had a close relationship to an adult Christian. And I think that this is a calling for us as youth leaders and adults, that these relationships to the students are more important than we probably think. The second thing he mentioned is that teenagers that stayed in church had a personal relationship to God. They hadn't just learned that prayer is important, but they have actually learned how to pray and how to read the Bible. And this is where he finds the biggest difference between those who stayed and those who didn't stay. That those who learned how to read the Bible, a lot of them were staying, most of them were staying in church, but those who didn't, most of them left church. He also saw that teenagers that stayed in church had seen with their own eyes that Christianity improved society. They had been to mission trips or seen the church's social engagement and seen with their own eyes that Christianity is making a difference in people's lives. And then the teenagers that stayed in church also had received challenges, and that's probably what I also experienced myself, that those youth I gave responsibility as leaders, most of them are still in church, but those who never got the opportunity, I think all of them have left. And of course there were reasons why I chose these people, but maybe it's possible for us to make more people leaders. Maybe it's possible for not only to preach by ourselves all the time, but equip them to be preachers, learn them how to preach together with them, because they will grow. And finally, he found out that teenagers that stayed in church also learned to apply their faith to the culture. It should be an E at the end there. And this corresponds to 5 existential questions in teenagers' lives. Am I loved? Who am I? What matters? What's my purpose? And how should I live? So what's named the most important role is vision designer, but the second most important role was actually role model. When talked, one of the parents says, "No, it's hard to get away from the function as a role model. Leaders are making an impression, and they stuck more than what they say." That stuck more than what they say at the service. People have to see it in your life. You are a model of how to be a Christian. And one of the other leaders said it this way: "I wish we had more time to read books, read the Bible, pray, develop, and think." And these are talking about 2 different roles, but I think there is a connection here. Because if the youth leaders should be a role model, we want them to have a relationship to God. And that's what the youth leaders themselves are talking about. It's hard to get enough time to be an apprentice, to have time to go to ELF, or to read and to develop and think and have enough time to prayer. And I think that we have something to learn from airplane industry. When I traveled down here, the captain, or probably not the captain, some of the cabin told me to, in an emergency, put on my own mask before helping others. And I think that's also an important thing for youth ministers. That if they are going to be good role models, I know a lot of youth ministers that are so busy, caring for others, oxygen mask, and their life with God, that they don't have the time to get what they need by themselves. So if we put these 5 different principles and maybe are asking ourselves about the same things, because I think that youth pastors and youth leaders and youth ministers have the same needs as the kids. That we shouldn't do this alone. That we actually need to experience Jesus for ourselves. That we actually need to see the difference by ourselves. That we also need to learn how to lead. That we need to have the time to go to ELF and other places, and to be encouraged and equipped and get new inspiration. And we also have to, if we are going to lead them how to live their faith in this culture, we need to have, we need this knowledge and this experience by ourselves.